These are called the 4Ds. That's why you have these 4D words here. They're not necessarily the greatest choice of words, I don't think. At least I don't love the one for quadrant 2. I might get into that at a different point. But do represents the things you need to do right now. It's urgent and it's important. It's like a fire drill or a fire, God forbid, or a kid got hurt or something like this. You have a primary donor that's on the phone and wants to talk to you right now, right? That's your do. And then you've got the defer, which is ideally where we want to operate as leaders. That's the visioning, that's the planning. That's where we distinguish ourselves, if you will, from the manager to the leader. The manager is the person who sort of pushes things along, but it's the leader who provides the vision. And that only happens really in quadrant 2. Quadrant 3, which is this bottom left over here, says delegate. Those are things that are, they're urgent in the sense that they're timely, but they're not important. And those are often things we want to give over to somebody else. We should talk about delegation as a topic another time, because it's a very deep topic. There's a lot to it, and I'd love to be able to share more about it. There's something called situational leadership from Ken Blanchard that I think is really important there. And then there's delete. Delete is all the trivial stuff that crosses through our inbox and elsewhere that we try to get rid of as much as possible. We don't want to spend any time in quadrant 4. Maybe we'll spend a little bit out of just being human beings in a world of technology and interruption, but we really want to delete all this stuff and not get sucked into it. And we do need to be mindful of it. But the dilemma here is being in quadrant 1 too much, right? And quadrant 1 can be, and by the way, just to clarify, it's not like these are static boxes, which means to say that faculty meeting will always be in this box, and walking the hallways and being present will always be in this box. Sometimes there's a level of urgency that occurs typically because we leave things too long, right? If we delay things that should have been done in a more organized and less pressured way, then all of a sudden we're up against deadline and now it becomes a quadrant 1 kind of thing. But I don't think, if I understood correctly, I don't think Yisrael is talking about things that he didn't properly plan or we didn't properly plan. It's just, whether it's COVID or other stuff going on, a lot of things are kind of like coming to our attention that seem to need immediate attention. And if we're constantly dealing with those, how do we have the bandwidth to do our real jobs? And how do we leave ourselves some energy to not be totally spent after a few minutes? If I may be so bold, I'm going to say something just because you all talked about it last 2 weeks, so I feel I can borrow it. And that is, I think we have to be lowering expectations for ourselves too, just a little bit. In other words, what I want everybody to learn when it comes to productivity is that this is what good practice looks like, right? These are the boxes. These are some of the guidelines and tools. But we have to remember that we are, when Ephraim, for example, is in a school where his associate principal is out for 2 weeks and his secretary is out for, 2 weeks, I'm guessing, or thereabouts, there's no way that we can, whatever it was, there's no way for us to expect that he's going to be, programming the way he typically would, or visiting as many classrooms as he typically would. The reality, the scenario at the moment demands something different, and we have to be able to accept it. On the other hand, we have to realize that we're living in a quote-unquote b'diavad reality. What I mean by that is not that we should feel guilty about it, but simply this is the reality right now. We have to deal with it the best we can. But when things, God willing, normalize, we will be back to spending more time in quadrant 2. One of the most powerful tools you could use is something called your calendar, and specifically blocking out your calendar for whatever that might be. Now, we often think we must be responsive to everything. And the way I often think about it is, what happens if I'm out of the building? Right? I mean, you all leave the building on occasion, I would imagine. Maybe you attend a conference. Maybe you've got a meeting with somebody off site. Maybe you have other reasons. Maybe we do this less now. But typically speaking, it's not crazy to imagine that a principal would be unavailable for whatever the reason. Right? I think, Ephraim, I think you shared with me personally the issue of, you sit down to your desk, you already have 3 texts from different Rebbeim, I need help, discipline issues, things like that. So what happened? Well, what happens literally if you're out of town for 2 days, right? What if, God forbid, we needed to be out because we weren't feeling so well or whatever it is? They'd have to manage, right? So coming back to what Aaron said before about managing expectations, we do want to be responsive. And of course, we want to tell our teachers we're going to be as responsive as we can. But they also need to know that there are going to be some times where we're just not going to be able to jump right in. And we need them to be able to, for lack of a better term, put their big boy pants on and deal with it. So that I think is an important thing as well. You'll know the situation in a case-by-case basis. But if you block out your time, and if you say that every morning I'm going to give myself really 90 minutes is a great amount of time to go deep into something, but let's even say 30 minutes a day or 60 minutes to do certain really important things. And then of course you have things that are coming and trying to interfere with that time. You have to decide, can I sort of hold tight and can this thing wait? Or do I really have to break that block that I gave myself and attend to it more rapidly? And only you could decide that. Of course, you want to loop your secretary in as well. If there's somebody who does keep your calendar, have her or him better understand also those parameters or those guidelines that you set for yourself. And the last thing I'll say, and then of course any final points from others, is that you want to just avoid, if you know that 8 to 9 is when most of this stuff is occurring, then I wouldn't block out 8 to 9 for personal time. I'd wait till 9 or 9:30 and then block out that time. But you should be able to do that, because if you don't, you will be chasing your tail all day and all night, and it'll feel like an endless rat race. If you don't engage in self-care, I don't mean just sleeping and things like that, but also just lighting yourself up with the things that make you feel alive as a principal, providing the guidance and the inspiration and the messaging and all those kinds of things, because you're always dealing with every little fire, then you're going to lose out, and your teachers and students will also lose out.